The checkered flag had barely waved at the Hungarian Grand Prix when the paddock erupted, not over who won, but over a penalty that has thrown Formula One's entire disciplinary system into question. A 7-time world champion, a 5-second time penalty, and a margin so small it's almost impossible to comprehend. But here's what's got everyone talking. That same 5-second penalty was also handed to a driver who took out the race leader. Same punishment, completely different offenses. And now fans are asking a question that Formula One might not want to answer. Has the FIA's penalty system completely lost its way? This isn't just about Lewis Hamilton. This is about consistency, or the complete lack of it, in a sport where milliseconds can define careers and championships. And the more you dig into what actually happened at the Hungaroring, the more you realize this one incident has exposed a much deeper problem within Formula One's rulebook. Because when a 0.1 kilometers per hour infraction carries the exact same weight as a collision that ends someone's race, something has gone seriously wrong. Let's rewind to understand exactly how we got here. The Hungarian Grand Prix was shaping up to be one of the most dramatic races of the season. The battle at the front was intense, with championship leader Kimi Antonelli fending off a charging Lewis Hamilton for a podium position. Hamilton, driving for Ferrari in what has been a roller coaster season, was on a mission. He had the pace, he had the car, and he had the experience to make something happen. But racing is never that simple, is it? It's never just about speed. It's about strategy, timing, and sometimes the smallest margins imaginable. That margin came during a virtual safety car period. For those who might not follow Formula One closely, a virtual safety car is essentially a neutralized race state where drivers are required to reduce their speed to a specified delta time. It's designed to ensure safety while allowing track workers to do their jobs without the need for an actual safety car deployment. During this period, teams often use the opportunity to pit their cars, changing tires and making adjustments while losing less time than they would under green flag conditions. It's a strategic chess match, and teams have to make split-second decisions that can make or break a race. Ferrari made the call to bring Hamilton into the pits. It was a bold move, a calculated gamble aimed at giving him an advantage when racing resumed. But here's where things went sideways. As Hamilton entered the pit lane, his speed was clocked at 80.1 kilometers per hour. That's 0.1 kilometers over the pit lane speed limit. Let me put that into perspective for you. We're talking about a margin so small it's almost imperceptible to the human eye. We're talking about a difference that could be caused by a gust of wind, a slight variation in tire grip, or even the natural tendency of a car to accelerate slightly on an incline. But in Formula One, rules are rules, and the FIA does not negotiate with margins. The penalty was swift and unavoidable. 5 seconds added to Hamilton's race time. Now, in a sport where races are often decided by tenths or even hundredths of a second, 5 seconds is an eternity. It's the difference between standing on the podium and going home with nothing. Hamilton crossed the finish line in 4th place, which would have been a solid result. Not a win, but points on the board, momentum for the team, and a podium finish that would have kept Ferrari in the championship conversation. But when the penalty was applied, he dropped to 5th, behind his own teammate Charles Leclerc. Ferrari still got the points, but the optics were brutal. A 7-time world champion, one of the greatest drivers the sport has ever seen, punished for a margin smaller than a sneeze. The internet, as you might imagine, had thoughts. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Because while Hamilton's penalty was controversial, it wasn't the only incident that had fans questioning the FIA's decision-making. Enter Carlos Sainz. The Ferrari driver, who has had his own share of ups and downs this season, was involved in a much more significant incident during the race. Sainz made contact with Oscar Piastri, the McLaren driver who had been leading the race at that point. Piastri was making his way through the back markers after pitting, and Sainz's collision with him cost the Australian driver the lead. Piastri ultimately retired from the race due to a gearbox failure, ending what had been a dominant performance. And how was Sainz penalized for taking out the race leader? The same 5-second penalty that Hamilton received for going 0.1 kilometers per hour over the limit. Let that sink in for a moment. Speeding by a margin so small it's almost physically impossible to detect without electronic timing equipment carries the exact same punishment as a collision that ended the race leader's day and completely changed the outcome of the Grand Prix. The logic is baffling, the inconsistency is staggering, and fans are not letting it slide. The comments section of every Formula One forum, social media platform, and news outlet have been flooded with reactions, and they range from frustrated to outright furious. One fan put it perfectly. 0.1 gets you the same penalty as taking out the race leader? Haha, I'm done. Another echoed that sentiment, saying, if there was no penalty, everyone would speed in the pit lane. Lewis's penalty was fair, and it was 100% driver error. Sainz, I agree, should have been extremely harshly punished. I would give a stop-and-go penalty and 4 points. And that's really the crux of the issue, isn't it? It's not that Lewis's penalty was unjust on its own merits. Speeding in the pit lane is a clear violation, and it's important that the rules are enforced. The problem is the proportionality. A 5-second penalty saddles a driver who made a minor miscalculation with the exact same professional consequences as a driver who caused a major collision that ruined another driver's race. Penalty for a 0.1 km/h infraction feels draconian, especially when it's the same penalty given to a driver who ended someone else's race. But let's not stop there, because this rabbit hole goes deeper than you might think. The virtual safety car period itself has become a point of contention among fans and pundits alike. Many have questioned whether Ferrari should have even pitted Hamilton in the first place. Some have suggested that the decision to bring him in under the virtual safety car was a strategic error, and that Hamilton's race was effectively over the moment he entered the pit lane. One fan wrote, his race was done the second he entered the pits. At least Charles was behind them, so the points stayed in Ferrari. Still a shame to throw away a podium with that pit. Another added, they shouldn't have pitted him. Max had no chance of catching him on old softs. Leclerc should have been the only one to pit during VSC. And these are valid points. Hindsight is always 20/20, but in the heat of the moment, the Ferrari pit wall had to make a split-second decision. They weighed the risks and rewards, and they got it wrong. It happens. Even the best teams make mistakes. But the optics of the situation are particularly painful for Ferrari, who have been fighting to close the gap to the championship leaders. Every point matters. Every position matters. And when you lose a podium because of a margin that's almost too small to measure, it stings. It stings even more when you see another driver receive the same penalty for a much more egregious offense. Now, let's talk about Oscar Piastri for a moment, because his story is one of the most heartbreaking of the entire weekend. The young McLaren driver was having the race of his life. He was leading, he was controlling the pace, and he looked like a genuine contender for the win. This was supposed to be his moment. This was supposed to be the race where Piastri announced himself as a future world champion. And then, in an instant, it was all taken away. The collision with Sainz cost him the lead, and the subsequent gearbox failure ended his race entirely. He finished with nothing, 0 points, a DNF. It's the kind of result that can haunt a driver for weeks. And the punishment for the driver who ended his race? 5 seconds. The same 5 seconds that Hamilton got for speeding. It's almost comical if it weren't so infuriating. Formula One is a sport built on precision, on the idea that every rule is carefully considered and every penalty is proportionate to the offense. But incidents like this expose the cracks in the system. They show that the FIA's penalty structure is not as consistent or fair as it should be. What makes this situation even more frustrating is that it's not the first time we've seen this kind of inconsistency. Over the years, Formula One has faced numerous controversies over the way penalties are handed out. In some races, drivers have received severe penalties for minor infractions, while in others, major incidents have gone unpunished or resulted in slap-on-the-wrist penalties. This inconsistency has led to accusations of favoritism, bias, and incompetence. Fans have called for a more transparent and consistent system, but the FIA seems reluctant to make significant changes. And as long as that remains the case, incidents like the one at the Hungarian Grand Prix will continue to happen. Now, let's take a step back and consider the bigger picture here. The Hungarian Grand Prix was just one race in a long season, but the fallout from this penalty could have serious implications for the championship. Every point is precious, and Hamilton dropping from 4th to 5th cost him 2 points. In the grand scheme of things, that might not seem like much, but when the championship is decided by a handful of points, every single one matters. And with Kimi Antonelli leading the standings, Ferrari can't afford to lose even a single point to their rivals. But here's another angle that hasn't been widely discussed: the impact of this penalty on Hamilton's reputation. Some fans argue that Hamilton has historically benefited from lenient penalties, while others claim he's been unfairly targeted by the FIA. This incident has reignited that debate. Whether you're a Hamilton fan or a critic, it's hard not to see the situation as emblematic of a larger problem. Formula One's penalty system needs to be reevaluated, and the FIA needs to do a better job of ensuring that similar incidents receive similar punishments. A one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work when the infractions are as different as speeding by 0.1 kilometers per hour and taking out the race leader. And let's not forget about the human element here too. Hamilton is a 7-time world champion, a future Hall of Famer, and one of the most respected figures in the sport. When he makes a mistake, it's news. When he receives a controversial penalty, it's even bigger news. Hamilton himself has been characteristically professional about the situation, acknowledging that he made an error and accepting the penalty. He didn't make excuses or blame the team. He took responsibility, and that deserves respect. But even he seems to recognize the irony of the situation. The penalty was fair by the letter of the law, but the lack of consistency in how penalties are applied is frustrating. And not just for him. It's frustrating for the fans, for the other drivers, and for anyone who wants to see Formula One operate as a fair and just sport. And here's the thing. This isn't just about one driver or one race. This is about the integrity of the sport. When the penalty system feels arbitrary and inconsistent, it undermines the trust that fans have in the governing body. It creates a sense that the outcome of races is influenced not just by the drivers' cars, but by the whims of the stewards. That's not what Formula One is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about the best drivers in the world competing on the edge of what's physically and technologically possible. It's supposed to be about skill, strategy, and courage, not about whether the stewards feel like applying the rules consistently on any given weekend. Fans have been calling for change for years, and incidents like this only amplify those calls. Some have suggested that penalties should be standardized based on the severity of the offense. A speeding infraction, for example, could carry a standardized fine or a time penalty that's proportionate to the amount of speed over the limit. A collision that ends someone's race, on the other hand, should carry a much harsher penalty, such as a drive-through or a stop-go. Others have argued that the stewards should have the discretion to apply penalties on a case-by-case basis, but with clear guidelines to ensure consistency. It's a delicate balance, and the FIA has struggled to find it. As the dust settles on the Hungarian Grand Prix, one thing is clear: this controversy isn't going away anytime soon. Fans are angry, drivers are frustrated, and the FIA is under pressure to explain its decision-making process. The Hungarian Grand Prix was supposed to be a showcase of the best that Formula One has to offer. Instead, it's become another chapter in the ongoing saga of controversial penalties and inconsistent officiating. The question now is whether the FIA will take action to address these concerns or continue to ignore the growing discontent among fans and drivers. There's another angle that has emerged from this controversy, one that touches on the broader issue of safety in Formula One. The pit lane speed limit exists for a reason. It's designed to protect the drivers, the pit crew, and the marshals who work in the pit lane. Speeding in the pit lane is dangerous, and it's important that drivers respect the limit. Hamilton's 0.1 km/h infraction was by all accounts an accident. It wasn't a reckless disregard for safety. It was a tiny error that could have happened to anyone. And yet, it was treated as a serious infraction. Some fans have argued that a warning or a fine would have been a more appropriate punishment for such a minor offense. The 5-second time penalty, they argue, was disproportionate to the safety risk involved. Meanwhile, Sainz's collision with Piastri was a clear safety risk. It could have led to a serious accident, and it did end Piastri's race. The same penalty for both incidents sends a confusing message about what Formula One considers serious and what it doesn't. There's also been discussion about the role of technology in enforcing penalties. The electronic timing systems used to monitor pit lane speeds are incredibly precise. They can detect infractions that are literally impossible to see with the naked eye. While this precision is admirable, it also raises questions about whether the rules are too strict. Should drivers be penalized for going 0.1 km/h over the limit, when that margin is so small it could be caused by something as simple as a change in tire pressure? There are no easy answers to these questions, but they're questions that need to be asked. Meanwhile, the fallout from the penalty continues to unfold on social media. Fans are sharing memes, voicing their frustrations, and calling for change. The incident has become a trending topic with thousands of posts and comments dissecting every aspect of the situation. Some fans are defending the FIA's decision, arguing that rules are rules and drivers need to be held accountable. Others are criticizing the inconsistency and demanding better. It's a debate that will likely continue for weeks, if not months. And as the season progresses, every time a driver receives a controversial penalty, this incident will be brought up as a comparison point. As the season moves forward, all eyes will be on how the FIA handles future incidents. Will there be a push for more consistency? Will the rules be reviewed and revised? Or will the governing body continue to rely on the same flawed system that has led to so much controversy? The answers to these questions will shape the future of Formula One, and for the fans, the drivers, and the teams, the stakes have never been higher. The Hungarian Grand Prix might be over for now, but the debate it has sparked is just beginning. Let's take a moment to appreciate the sheer drama of it all. Here's a sport where every millisecond counts, where drivers push themselves to the absolute limit, where teams spend millions of dollars chasing fractions of a second. And yet, at the end of the day, the outcome of a race can be decided by a bureaucrat's decision, by a 5-second penalty that seems almost arbitrary. It's the kind of story that would seem far-fetched if it weren't happening in real life. But it's happening right now, and it's fascinating to watch. Hamilton's situation might be resolved for now, but the questions remain unanswered. Why is the penalty system so inconsistent? Why are we seeing such a gap between the punishment for minor and major offenses? What can be done to restore trust in the officiating of Formula One? These are big questions, and they deserve big answers. But for now, we're left with the debate, the frustration, and the hope that the powers that be are listening. And maybe, just maybe, this controversy will be a wake-up call. Maybe it'll force the FIA to rethink its approach to penalties. Maybe we'll see a new system that's clear, more transparent, and more consistent. Or maybe we'll continue to see the same old issues play out race after race, season after season. The future of Formula One depends on getting this right. And for the sake of the sport, let's hope that lesson is learned sooner rather than later. At the end of the day, racing is about passion, competition, and the thrill of pushing boundaries. It's not about bureaucracy or inconsistent rulings. The passion is what keeps us coming back, and the belief in fair competition is what gives the sport its integrity. But when that belief is shaken, the sport suffers. The Hungarian Grand Prix might have been just one race, but the fallout from Hamilton's penalty is a reminder that even the smallest details can have huge consequences. Now, as the dust settles and the teams begin to look ahead to the next race, fans will be watching closely. They'll be analyzing every decision, scrutinizing every penalty, and demanding accountability, because they want to believe in the fairness of the sport they love. They want to see the best drivers in the world competing on equal terms, and they want to know that the rules apply equally to everyone. The Hungarian Grand Prix might not have delivered the outcome they hoped for, but it has delivered a conversation that needed to happen. And that conversation might just be the most important part of this entire story.